We are on to session number 4, climate action and local agriculture for restaurants. And this is going to be a fun session too. Our premier climate action speaker is the founder of many restaurants and was nominated for a James Beard Award for Outstanding Restaurateur in 2019 and won the Basque Culinary World Prize last year. He is going to be talking to us about zero footprint and the local campaign here called Restore Colorado. Resilient Restaurants has been able to be a part of this as a recruit and promotional outreach partner almost since the beginning. And this campaign is taking serious root because it started in Boulder and is now spreading very quickly through the state. And we're very excited to announce this. This is the kind of the first opportunity where I've wanted to announce this to all of our membership statewide, and really look forward to hearing more about it. Please welcome Anthony Myatt of Zero Footprint and Restore Colorado.
Thanks, Robert. And thanks to everybody who's doing such great work, including some Zero Footprint members. So shout out to Solomon's and Scraps Mile High, among others. Yeah, sorry if I'm missing anybody. But so as Robert mentioned, we've done a lot of successful restaurants in the industry. We actually started doing pop-ups before that was even a term. It turned into a permanent pop-up called Mission Chinese Food. Then we expanded to New York, basically in a shitty Thai takeout window. But miraculously, that won New York Times Restaurant of the Year in 2012. And we kind of found ourselves really feeling like we had the ability to use our platform in the industry to start making change and start working on climate solutions. So fast forward a few years, my wife and I had a daughter, and as we started to think about climate change and these other big issues, we began this nonprofit, Zero Footprint, and also a restaurant called The Perennial. And at The Perennial, we were really trying to champion regenerative agriculture. And this was in 2015. So it was kind of like before, a lot of people had even heard that term, I would say. And I think if you asked me at the time, like, hey, can you define healthy soil? I probably wouldn't even have been able to give you a good definition. At this point, I can say, pretty clearly healthy soil is soil with a lot of living things in it. But so around this time, what was starting to happen was scientists and really like society were starting to understand the incredible opportunity of soil carbon. And basically it almost comes down to like the equivalent of planting trees. And, when you plant a tree, photosynthesis takes carbon from the atmosphere, turns it into a big tree trunk after 30 years, whatever. If you cut down that tree, it decays, oxidizes back into the atmosphere. And so amazingly, though we probably learned this in like high school biology or these sorts of things, I think I didn't really understand that it's like either or, that basically if we are doing industrial, conventional, extractive farming, we're releasing the carbon. And if we're doing regenerative farming, we can just restore all that carbon, in a decade, maybe even. And so around the time that society was starting to understand this, we were working on this restaurant and really, excited and optimistic. But after running the restaurant for a couple of years and starting, basically customers asking us like, this is amazing, where can I get these ingredients and things? And the answer would always kind of be like, oh, there's not that much supply. We started to learn that we needed a different way to make systems change. And so, sorry, maybe I'll shift into present mode. And so one of the big pieces of research was this organization Project Drawdown. So just like at the highest level, they were finding that, if we did all the different solutions, all the different, renewable energy, educating girls, reducing food waste, regenerative agriculture, all the different things that society could actually lower global temperatures. We could solve the, whole climate crisis. And basically it would take 1% of GDP each year to do this. And so that really again, shifted the whole thinking for me from kind of like anxiety and, crawling into bed and getting under the covers to really a spirit of proactiveness and optimism. Like we can do it if we just start focusing on the different solutions. And so this chart is a little graphic about the opportunities. So this isn't the sources of emissions, but the opportunities to reduce and remove. And so you see like land sinks and food and ag are, basically the biggest opportunities together, bigger than electricity and transportation and all the other things that we currently focus a lot of energy on. And then meanwhile, regenerative cropping and managed grazing are like really no regrets, win-win-win solutions. For each dollar invested, they're providing $20 in benefit to society through water conservation and resilience and all these things, carbon sequestration, more nutritious food, but also $20 in prosperity for farmers. And so as we were strategizing around these things, we began collaborations with state agencies in California. And then just this year, really with Boulder County and City of Denver on bringing this program to Colorado. And so really the way we're doing this is at no cost to restaurants in almost every case. A lot of restaurants are participating by just adding a simple opt-out fee, that's 1%. And really what it's doing is giving customers a way to take local, meaningful climate action. So that 1%, over the course of a year adds up to quite a lot of money. And it's almost just like a pass-through where customers are directly funding local regenerative agriculture projects. And so really the inspiration for this is a lot of the progress that's going on in the renewable energy industry. So if you imagine like, a utilities company charges $5 per month, sometimes people are opting in, maybe at some point they switched that to an opt-out. Millions of dollars is flowing towards solutions and like meaningful change. And nobody has to take out a loan for solar panels or climb up on the roof and break out the instruction manual. It's just part of a new normal. So in a lot of ways, that's the vision here, is that we can change 50% of farmland, one whole food shed at a time, if we take this kind of collective action. And so there's a bunch of great businesses and partners in Colorado, including resilient restaurants. And what's also great is that we have compost companies like Scraps and A1 Organics. And so just all levels of the food system starting to come together to create this sort of renewable food economy. And the money from these couple cents per purchase is basically just going to fund these kinds of practices like planting cover crops, applying compost, reducing tillage. And so our first few pilot projects are at McCauley Family Farms, Esoteric Culinary, and Frontline Farming in Denver. There's a couple more. All of these are overseen by a great local organization, Mad Agriculture. And then pretty soon we're hoping to open up to statewide applications. And so overall, Robert, is Daniel Asher also joining, or I forgot if I was supposed to leave a couple minutes for him?
He is not joining us today if you want to include your piece for that.
Okay, cool. Well, basically, I can just speak on behalf of Daniel. We're doing a webinar with Boulder County a couple weeks ago. And I mean, I was really surprised because I first met Daniel at Slow Food in 2018, I think. And, talked his ear off, like I'd never met him. He sat with me for like an hour or whatever. And we were just, talking about all these possibilities. And I really thought like, oh man, he's going to like start a big movement here. And nothing happened for, a year, maybe more. And, he finally eventually joined Zero Foodprint in October. So he was speaking about it in this webinar, and he was saying like, we had all these anxieties, like what are customers going to think, whatever, on and on. And he was like, and then, all of that was just in our heads. Like, we started it, and it barely anybody even like noticed. And then in fact, like anybody who did notice was like super excited about it. And like the staff is so excited about it. Basically it's just a way to make the dining experience even more meaningful and give back to the community, but in a way that's scalable and, funding kind of like restoring the foundation through healthy soil. And so I'm happy to answer any, further questions or specifics, and I can go like super deep, but I'll leave the time for Margaret and the other panelists for now.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Yeah, we'll definitely have we'll have some questions and some Q&A. We'll come back to it. So everyone, our next speaker is someone who I've really enjoyed working with more closely these last few months. Margaret McRoberts is a GBC member. She's the chair lead of our environmental working group. To give a little background on her, she founded Stella Sustainability in 2019, which is a consultancy that provides support on a wide range of climate and sustainability topics, including strategic whole systems planning and visioning for sustainability. Margaret holds a master's in strategic leadership towards sustainability from BTH in Sweden and a graduate certificate from the University of Denver in renewable energy and sustainability. She's worked as the National Park Service's Intermountain Regional Sustainability Coordinator and for the Washington, D.C. of Sustainable Operations and Climate Change. In addition, and very importantly, her and her husband have owned and operated an organic peach orchard in Hotchkiss, Colorado. So she understands what it's like to get her hands dirty and grow food. She's really passionate about the role of local regenerative agriculture in creating a thriving and sustainable community. Please give your attention to Margaret McRoberts.
Thank you for that introduction, Robert. It's been so great working with you over the last few months too. I'm gonna see if I can share my screen. Technology is never my strong suit, so just give me a moment here. Okay, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to share the Rocky Mountain High Plains Food Collaborative with you all. This is a project that started almost close to a year and a half ago, and we've been building momentum. And I'm really excited to say that we now have a 2-year grant from the Gates Family Foundation to continue our process, and I'll explain further where we're at in that process. And then I've just put together our main team that's up here. So you can see that we're really looking at food hubs, farm-based aggregators, and food assistance aggregators, as well as other producers and groups that actually help support local food. And we're stretched from Colorado to Western Kansas, Northern New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, Nebraska. And we're also looking to see if there's potential for some part of Arizona to be included in the conversation. And so when we first got together and we started talking about what was needed to build our regional food system, what was missing, what were the challenges. And I remember when my husband and I had our orchard, we suddenly realized that we were spending a lot more time trying to sell our peaches and then shuttling our peaches to and from at the same time, taking little kids, flood irrigating, doing all of the other work that you need to do. And so we quickly realized there's got to be some way to make it easier for small to medium-sized producers. And so when we moved back to the Front Range, this just kind of became one of my passionate stances to try to find some sort of alternative, knowing that we couldn't 100% change our industrial food system, but is there a way that we could find for small to medium-sized producers, particularly those that are looking at regenerative and equitable labor practices, to take part and be competitive? And so at the moment, the sad truth is that producers earn about 14.6 cents to every dollar spent on food production. COVID highlighted to us how our industrial systems are actually not quite resilient. We also understand that it's really difficult for buyers to shop and purchase from numerous small to medium-sized producers. There's a lot of logistical problems for the producers. And so they're spending a lot less time growing food and instead trying to navigate how they can get their food to buyers for a good price so they can make a living and continue growing. We also know that through COVID and prior to that, we see how unequitable some of our systems are and how we need to strengthen our agricultural communities. And we also realize that our climate is changing. So our growing seasons are becoming more unpredictable. We have water issues, and we really need to also have agriculture be part of a solution and reducing the overall greenhouse gas emissions. So factoring all of this in, what we decided to do is to pull together what we're hoping will end up being a producer and aggregator owned collaborative, something that can in some ways quite different, obviously, from Cisco and Shamrock and what chefs want, but something that can at least compete at a certain level and make it easier for people that are interested in buying regional food that was grown with a values proposal, easy for them to purchase it. And so what we've set up is a collaborative that has two different elements to it. So there's the network that focuses on the marketing, selling, aggregation, and distribution piece. And what we're looking at is creating a hub and spoke model so that the existing food hubs and then aggregators that are on farms or there's different aggregators that are pulling from multiple farms, they still remain autonomous. They're able to do their work, but we can work together as a team so that we can become more effective. We can work with finding larger buyers, and we can also move products across our region instead of being isolated in our smaller regional areas or food sheds. And also somebody to help with consumer and buyer outreach so that the producers and the food hubs aren't feeling that this is something that rests on their shoulders completely. Instead, we have a message that we're sharing across. Also, for instance, in the Western Slope, that's the main area where we're having fruit grown. And at the same time, we've got some fruit being grown in Kansas, but the seasons are different. So is there a way that we could start sharing that instead of having the short season, extending it a bit longer? And that also increases how do we look at value-added products and how do we look at storage, freezing, and also looking at what we plant in order to extend the season. So in addition to this aggregation, distribution, marketing group, we found that it was really important to have a knowledge sharing and technical assistance center so that the producers have access to the information they need to make a change. They can inform the dialogue. They can start letting the different organizations that are there to support them understand what they need. And basically this center would be sort of a funnel through. We're not going to reinvent the wheel. We know there's so many great efforts out there like Zero Foodprint, Mad Agriculture. We want to partner with what's happening. Colorado Department of Ag, their new soil health project. But how can we partner in a way that we can offer this incentive of a marketplace so that we can start shifting some of the producers that aren't quite doing the climate change, the farm planning, the equity towards this direction by offering them a marketplace. And so our values, this is our focus at the moment of our values, fair price for all producers, and then also a living wage, so social equity for all food system laborers, and then really focusing on how do we build strong agricultural communities. And this can do with building up businesses. It can look at how we can help with infrastructure and communities within our urban and rural areas. And then also really focusing on regenerative agricultural practices and then mitigating climate change. One topic that really came up is the importance of looking at single-use plastics, reducing energy and water use, and then overall just increasing the supply that we have, because we know that we're going to need to grow more if we really want to focus on regionally grown produce products. And then once again, revitalizing the consumer's connection to producers, and then also educating them on the benefits of local and regenerative. Why is it better to purchase one of these products, even if you're paying a little bit more? And so where we're at in this project is we're working on coming up with developing. We have 2 different work sessions that are in place. One happens at the end of this month, and it's between aggregators. And we're looking at how they can start to share the resources that they have, how they can link products, how they can start to collaborate and build this foundation that will become the collaborative. And then we also have another group that's looking at values. Do we create some sort of transitional program so producers that are interested but might not have the knowledge can join us, and then in a couple of years they're full-fledged members? How do we look at supporting the food hubs at the same time the producers? And at the end of summer, we hope to have a draft organizational plan and a business plan that we'll present to a workshop. The workshop will be inviting funders, buyers, other producers, and basically just getting feedback and saying, does this work? Is everybody ready to join? If you're interested, this is where we sign up, and we're going to enter the 2022 buying market with a bang, we hope. And so how you could support this project, we have Thursday calls where we invite different groups to come and share projects. Once again, we're trying not to reinvent the wheel. We're trying to take all of the great projects that's been happening across our region and pull them together, kind of weave this tapestry so that we can become more effective and work together. So please reach out to me if you're interested in joining one of those calls. We'd also like to learn what restaurants need. So I worked in restaurants for many years, and I have a bit of an inkling how I think we could approach selling to restaurants, but we would love to hear your thoughts and if this is something that you think is important and you're interested in. And that funnels into buying from our collaborative. When we start in January, we're still looking for buyers, and then just sharing this project with colleagues and friends and reaching out if you have any questions, because we're just hoping to incorporate as many opinions and thoughts as possible so that we can come up with a really strong foundation and plan to really rejuvenate the regional food network in our region. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. One quick question for you to start things off from one of our members is, have you considered basically a co-op structure, maybe if you want to speak to the difference or strategy of why you're handling that?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you. And so I should have emphasized in the beginning, I'm working with Rocky Mountain Farmers Union, their cooperative center. So Dan Hobbs and Sandra Baca. And in 2016, RMFU actually tried to put together something similar to this, but it didn't have the knowledge sharing center and a few other components. And so our hope is that we actually will set it up with a cooperative structure so that it'll be owned by producers and aggregators. And so that's what we're hoping and we're proposing. And we're just in the process now of working with all of the aggregators to figure out what they think works and then determining who else we need to invite to finalize that.
Yeah. What is kind of the primary transportation strategy?
Yes, that's a really good question too.
Like, is
Robert,
that will it be a private? Will it be like internally hired drivers or contracted drivers?
So we're looking at all sorts of ideas. Right now, what we've turned it into is it's going to be, we're looking at what we're calling a strategic transportation infrastructure. And it's going to be a mix of it. So we recognize that it doesn't make sense for us to buy a lot more trucks. There's a lot of groups outside of the agricultural world that are actually backhauling. For instance, Ready Ice, a cousin of a person that's part of our team. He's reached out and said, hey, I'm backhauling X amount of days from these places and I'd love to pick up something. There's also the idea of leasing some trucks. So Penske, it's great to lease from them. There's requirements as to where they're maintained and how they're dropped off. And so if once again, we combine resources, we'll be able to do that more effectively. There's also an idea too, how can we look at alternate fueled vehicles? And then is there a way that we could sort of push Penske or other groups towards the rental? Some of the food hubs already do have trucks. So how would we maximize that? How do we look at storage? Yeah, there's a lot of great projects that are underway to build capacity for dry freeze storage, industrial quick freeze. And so we're just trying to combine all of that so we can be effective.
It sounds like you're on it, and there's a lot of moving parts to that. We all wish you the best in the planning. I really hope some of our members hop on the call and can give some input. Maybe we could put a survey together or something online to allow them to give some input on their own time. Love to work on something with that with you.
That would be great, Robert.
This next question is for Anthony. Do you expect then that the Restore Colorado campaign will inevitably or eventually roll up to be a statewide kind of public-private partnership, or is the more regional local municipality model probably going to continue even as it grows?
I think the goal would be a statewide collaboration. It's pretty timely because Colorado's working on some healthy soils legislation right now. Yeah. That said, we're also finding that kind of regional partnerships often, like the government staff and programs, are basically like a little bit more agile at the regional level. Right. So, I mean, at the moment, any restaurant in Colorado can already participate and start funding projects. I think our hope is that when we open applications statewide later this year, that will, form stronger regional collaborations. But it's been amazing having like Boulder County and Denver, on these calls with us as we're talking with chefs and restaurateurs, because it really helps people understand that, this isn't a charity. This isn't like a donation to one farmer to be nice and feel good. This is part of a necessary and new change in the whole food economy that's happening, and basically is like as inevitable as renewable energy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is there an opportunity for members who are not in an area where there's a local farm connected to them yet? Do you have the ability to hold possibly the monies that they put into the system until the application spreads statewide?
We haven't really explored doing it that way, but if you kind of imagine, like, let's say a project takes $25,000, and let's say a restaurant is participating and collecting a few cents per meal and $1,000 a month is coming in, whether their $1,000 goes to their farmer or to a different project, and then 6 months later, all the restaurants in Boulder and Denver that are participating, their money's going to the project closer to a restaurant in Fort Collins. It's sort of like part of the whole goal here is not to get hung up on like, those couple cents going to that farm, but just overall like making progress and knowing that it'll come around eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that most, most people are going to have that values connection to it, and want to see it get some legs too. So I know that the Boulder and kind of Denver Metro and everything that you've been working on for several months now has launched officially now, and is about to be in Earth Week and springtime promotions and doing that. Are there any other specific time frames or anything that people should be aware of in terms of timing their participation, or is it just at a point now where let's just sign people up and grow the program?
I think the latter. Basically the idea is that there's kind of a coordinated launch just for awareness, but really what's happening is it's almost like stealth. Like at each participating restaurant, a few cents is going towards these solutions. Everybody can feel good and know that, like, simply by going to one of the participating restaurants, they're fighting climate change. And the hope is just that builds up. So I think my biggest goal would be to, like, show all the participating restaurants that this is a business win, that customers want this, and people aren't upset about a hidden charge. It's almost the opposite, that they're, like, excited to have the opportunity to take direct local action. And so as that keeps building, hopefully more and more consumers and businesses just start participating, and we can change a lot of acres, and hopefully work with Margaret too.
Yeah, absolutely. Margaret, do you want to speak to, is this the first time you've seen Anthony's presentation?
Yes, and I'm really excited. We've talked about it before, Robert and I, with Zero Food Print, and I've been looking at it, and we've had a few calls back and forth with Mad Ag for over the last year, talking about, hey, the project's gaining momentum. We'd love to have your input. And I'm just at a phase right now where I'm reaching out and trying to find all of the different programs where there's synergies to make sure that we link them all together. And so I have been talking with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, their soil health initiative, and then the Colorado Collective for Healthy Soils. And we've discussed, they've been talking about maybe having a group that looks at marketplaces within their group. So I think that, yeah, I'm really excited. Anthony and I exchanged messages offline to meet up and figure out more how we can coordinate.
Great. Let's see if we have any other questions coming in. No, I don't see any questions. We do have a minute if either of you would like to expand on anything.
Do you have anything more you want to say, Anthony?
Trying to think if I have any questions.
I'm okay. If you want, I have like a 1 minute or less video from Marcus McCauley that I can pop in the chat. He's one of the first grantees, and he's like really a million times more poignant speaking about healthy soil than I am. So,
okay, yeah, very good. Let me.
Or I could try to play it. I don't know if I can share whatever stuff, but
I got you.
Okay, cool.
I could say while you're working on that, Robert, too, that it's so great to see the work that Zero Food Print is doing in the idea of pushing soil health from a market perspective. And that's really sort of where our focus has been too, because we understand producers need to make a living. And so if we're able to offer them a market where they can make these great changes and at the same time still make a living, that's really where I think we're going to incentivize change.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's, I've queued up this video with Marcus McCauley. He's one of the farmers that's participating in the program.
In the last 40 years, 30% of the world's farm. That's because the way the land has been farmed is extracted the value out of it to the point when it's no longer productive. It's going to take investment and time to bring life back to the soil. The current food system incentivizes a race for yield. And yield doesn't capture nutrient density. Nutrient density comes from healthy soil practice. So this program is a way for a consumer to vote for healthy soil. Healthy soil grows the most nutrient dense and delicious food possible. It also happens to sequester carbon and have a major impact on climate change. I mean, we're talking about like a consumer revolution, right? I mean, we're talking about putting the power in the hands of consumers to choose what kind of food system they want.
Great. Thanks for that link, Anthony.
Sure. Thanks.
And for both of you for joining us today to speak. Two really amazing programs that connect food service and agriculture and climate change and our customers. There's a lot of value, and I really look forward to what happens, and we can develop some amazing success.
Thanks, Robert. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
You're welcome. Have a beautiful evening.